Shalom, peace be with you, Mr. Lee Weissman. I'm Lale Tuncer, and we're from Universal God Message of Peace. And today we're going to be talking about fasting and feasting. And the holy month of Ramadan is coming upon us, and millions of Muslims around the world will be fasting from sunrise until sunset. And today we're going to be talking about why, from an Abrahamic perspective, we fast and its benefits, what it's all about. So over to you, Mr. Weissman.
Okay. Well, it's interesting when first talked about this topic, and first talked about doing this topic, I thought, okay, we'll talk about fasting. And especially in relation to Ramadan, we normally think of it as being fasting, but in my experience of Ramadan, it's also about feasting. Right? I mean, everybody has, their recipes and, big meals and family meals, and people come to visit and everything else. There's two things going on, really. One is the fasting, and one is the feasting, and they both deserve, I think, thinking about. And both of them have deep roots in the Abrahamic tradition. Certainly, in the Jewish tradition, both of them are extremely, extremely important. And I think to understand fasting, you have to understand eating. And to understand eating, you have to understand fasting. So the two of them are kind of interrelated to each other. And that just like there are better and worse ways to fast, there are also better and worse ways to eat. I mean, there are more elevated ways to eat. Let's not say bad and good. Let's say elevated. There are more elevated ways to fast, and there are more elevated ways to eat. So I think I'm going to start with eating first. Is that okay? Can I start with eating first?
Fine, let's talk about eating.
So eating is, if you had to pick one activity which epitomizes our job in the world, probably it would be eating. Because, first of all, eating is simultaneously a need and a pleasure. Right? Which is really what most of life is, right? Most of life is a mixture of need and pleasure. There are things that we need to do, right? We need to make a living, we need to raise our kids, we need to do all these things, but there's also pleasure involved. Those are not neutral activities. And eating is definitely both of those things, both a need and a pleasure. And we have to weigh the need against the pleasure, right? Sometimes the pleasure overrides the need, right? We're eating chocolate cake or whatever else. We know that it's not good for us, right? We know that it's not good for us because we've decided on pleasure over nutrition, right? But that decision is always there. So eating always involves this a decision between what's good for us and what's pleasurable. And that, in a sense, that's the human dilemma, right? So every time you have a piece of chocolate cake in front of you, you are involved in the deepest human dilemma. How do I decide between what's good for me, right, and what I like, right? So that's the first part. The second part is that the world is a mixture of spiritual and physical, right? The world is, infused in the world, I believe, is a kind of spiritual essence, if you will. And eating is the kind of separation, the process of separating the spiritual essence, the nutritive part of something, from its not nutritive part. So think about how, digestion works. It's amazing, right? You chew the food, and digestion already begins with the saliva in your mouth, and there are enzymes, and it goes down into your stomach, and there's acids and enzymes and all sorts of things, and going into the small intestines, and and then large intestines, and things are being absorbed. All the nutrients are being absorbed in all the different ways they're absorbed. And then finally we produce waste. And that's basically what life is like. Life is basically, how are we able to take what
Mhm.
is nourishing, what is life-giving, what is light and good out of a world that's a mixed bag.
Mhm.
And so that makes eating a really a kind of metaphor, right? So already those two things, distinguish between what we need and what's pleasurable, and to extract what is good, what is spiritual from what is physical, and that's basically human life right there. Okay, so every time you're sitting down at the table, you're it's life in its small form. Now add to that
Mhm.
that it's one of the best ways to show love and fellowship, right? So
Mhm.
add that to that, right? That this is the probably the most powerful way that we socialize, right? You know, if I say breaking bread, everybody knows what that means, and everybody can feel it inside, right? What that means to break bread with somebody, what it means to um, what it means to sit down with somebody else and eat. It's a very profound thing, right? It's not a simple, interaction. It's not like meeting somebody on the subway, right? It means, or I guess metro, whatever you the underground. It's not a casual interaction. The moment that you sit down and you eat with somebody, it's a it there's something that happens between people. And so that's also important. And there are vastly different ways of eating. One of the things that I loved, I went to somebody's house for Ramadan, and the table was set, and we were um, waiting for the fast to be over, and somebody complained. It was like an interfaith Ramadan. One of the Christian guests complained and said, why are you putting all this food in front of me, when I can't eat yet? And one of the people responded. He said, no. He says, we always tried to do this. We always tried to put the food on the table and then sit down, and then we'll have our date, have the date in front of us. And the idea is because we want to be conscious of the fact that we're not eating and now we're going to eat. And and of course I live in America, and we are the land of fast food. And people grab a hamburger, they grab a hamburger and they're walking around eating the hamburger, or they're driving and eating the hamburger, or they're, right? There's distracted ways of eating and there's mindful ways of eating. There are
Mhm.
ways of eating in which we pray to God before we eat, we pray to God after we eat, we pray to God while we're eating, we're paying attention to the way that we eat.
Mhm.
Um, there are even there are meditations that people do while they're eating. There are lots of different ways of elevating the eating already when you're sitting around the table with people and just saying a short prayer. Already you've elevated the meal to a great extent.
So,
But
what would you say is the actual purpose of eating? What is you're saying that it's nice to sit down and the company is important, but
right.
what about the actual eating part? What is the higher purpose of
Well, I
eating?
think I think the eating, first of all, you have to keep yourself alive. That's the first part, right? You can't serve God in this world if you're dead. So you have to keep yourself alive. That's number one, right? And you have to keep yourself healthy, number two.
Hmm.
And also pleasure is an important part of life. I mean, God didn't put us in this world, to be miserable. He put us in the world also to be able to enjoy his world. He created all these beautiful fruits. He created all these flavors, and we should be able to enjoy those flavors.
Hmm.
That's also important. It's a way of appreciating God's world.
So,
Um,
remembering God while we're eating and remembering to thank Him and use that energy from the food
right.
do good. to look after our bodies, because I guess, are you saying our bodies are like, if you were riding on a donkey, you would want to look after your donkey so that you can get from A to
Of
B.
course, right. You're right. You want it to be healthy, but you
Yeah.
also want it to be happy. It's important. Like if your donkey likes carrots, okay, and carrots put a little spring in your donkey's step, then you want to give your donkey carrots. And you want to do the same thing with yourself. I mean, food makes people happy. And we serve God much better when we're happy. So there's nothing, we don't have to, well, you know,
So our body, we should look at what our body needs, because what our body wants as
sure.
well, to a certain point, because I guess our body is like the donkey, isn't it? From a
Right. It was to learn to listen to our bodies, to know what it is that our body wants. And
Mhm.
that changes over time. And sometimes we have to say no to ourselves, when we know that those things are not good for us.
Yeah.
But also really, I think to have gratitude, to
Mhm.
have and also to have the mindfulness that, okay, like I have the privilege of being conscious about my eating. I'm not a cow, right? The cow is just eating, grazing, whatever else. So I should try not to eat like a cow. My rabbi used to always, he would give me a cup of coffee, and if I walked across the room drinking my cup of coffee, he would say to me, "Are you a cow?" Because cows eat standing up. And it's a human being, he says, a human being doesn't eat standing up. A human being eats sitting down. So to sit down, even a simple thing, honestly,
Mhm.
Rabbi Nachman of Breslov once said that a person should eat with manners. It
Mhm.
says just a simple thing is if you eat with manners, even if you're eating alone, he said, even eating alone, put down a placemat, put out a knife, put out a fork, put out a napkin, right? Give yourself a nice plate, right? And it changes the way that you feel about yourself, right? The person who's sitting in their car eating the hamburger, right, out of the paper, right? Hey, out of the paper and driving with the other hand, right? That eating is not an elevating experience, right? He's eating basically like a raccoon, you
What if
know?
you're working so hard you don't have time to sit and enjoy the
Uh,
eating, and you have to eat to keep going, to
sure,
keep
sure.
working?
What can you do? Yeah, what
What
can you
do
do?
you do in those situations?
Rabbi Nachman has another story. So he has a story about a shoemaker, and he says the shoemaker used to sit on his bench, and he would take a bite of bread, and continue with your shoes and take another bite of bread. And there, of course, that sometimes happens. And but even then, you could have in mind, for 1 second. It just
Mhm.
takes 1 second,
Yeah,
to say, God, I'm eating this so that I can continue my work. I'm doing good things here.
exactly.
You're a doctor, it makes it easy. But I'm doing good things here. I was a teacher, it was easy. Also, I'm doing good things here. I need to eat this fast because I have to get back to work. And this
Like,
especially applies, by the way, to when you break a fast. One of the
mhm.
things, I've noticed is sometimes when people when they've been fasting and they're going to break the fast,
Oh,
it-
yes, about prayer. So
yeah,
whether you eat first and then pray, or
right. You
pray
know,
and eat. And
yeah,
actually, by the end of the day, you really want to eat.
yeah,
So some people say, well, if you eat before prayer, then you're going to concentrate more when you're praying. And others might say, well, actually, no, prayer is more important. So we need to be mindful of God and then eat.
yeah.
I
I
think both ways work, is like
yeah.
whatever I think it's a personal choice for each
My
person.
when I was I on Shabbat, I don't eat before prayers. I have coffee, but I don't have anything else. And my daughter used to do the same thing. She used to do the same thing as me, and she would get like really tired and whatever. And um, and I I heard a story. There's a story about a famous rabbi, and his daughter was praying on Shabbat morning, and she was praying very fast, 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 fast. And he turned to his daughter. He said, "Why are you praying so fast?" She said, "I'm hungry." She said, "I'm hungry." He said, "Listen, better to have something beforehand. It's better to eat to pray than to pray to eat."
But
You
if
know?
you eat before you pray, then you go into a food coma.
Right.
You don't want to go into a food
Right.
coma.
So people have to figure this out. Consult your local scholar to figure out the best thing to do in your case. But even so, when you sit down and you eat,
Mhm.
it's good to eat it's good to eat slowly, to eat, well, but not to, overstuff yourself. There's a story that it's there was a Hasidic master called the Baal Shem Tov, and he lived during the 17th century, and he had a magic power. Okay, so his magic power was he could travel long distances in a very short time. And what he would do is he would hitch up his horses, and 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 they could miraculously travel very long distances. So one time he hitched up these horses and he started doing this traveling thing, and they're covering a lot of ground. And
Mhm.
the horse notices, this is the story. The horse notices it's covering a lot of ground and thinks, wait, this is crazy. Says, like, we've gone so far and I'm not even hungry yet. Okay. I'm not even, by now I would have eaten 3 meals. He says, maybe I'm not a horse anymore. Maybe I've become a human being. And then they're traveling further and further and further. And he realizes, he says, wow, I have covered a huge amount of ground and I'm still not hungry. He says, maybe I'm not a human being. Maybe I've become an angel. So
Oh.
finally, the Baal Shem Tov stops and
Mhm.
and he takes the feedback and he puts it around the horse's face, and the horse starts eating and eating and eating and eating and eating. And he whispers into the ear of the horse. He says, "My
Mhm.
dear friend, the horse." He
Mhm.
says, "It's not how you eat. It's not how you fast that makes you an angel. It's how you break your fast." Right?
Oh, I
So
see.
that
That's
that
amazing. It's a great
right,
story.
that suddenly he becomes a horse again. So
Oh,
sometimes with us, okay, we spend the whole day and we're fasting and we're trying to elevate ourselves. And the moment the food is in front of us, big pile of food, right? We dive in, right? Just be slow, right?
yes,
Take,
definitely. I
yeah.
think, well, that's amazing. So we've spoken about eating, and let's talk about fasting and the benefits of fasting. I just need to let my dog out. Just one moment, sorry.
Okay.
Um, okay.
Okay. While the dog is going out, we'll talk about the benefits of fasting.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
So,
We have to teach the dog about the benefits of the fasting. Um,
I mean, I can tell you a bit about Ramadan if you like, or you can tell us about Ramadan and
tell me.
benefits of. Okay, so Muslims in the month of Ramadan uh, fast for 30 days, and in these 30 days they don't eat or drink from the hours of from sunrise until sunset, and they abstain from other things as well, so sexual intercourse, and they should really, it's not just about eating, it's not just about food, it should be really about spiritual purification and trying to control our mouths and our hearts and our thoughts and our speech. Yeah, so mouths and um, our behavior. So it's quite deep, really. But sort of from the outside, it just looks like, oh, you're not eating and drinking. And many people ask, well, why would God ask that of you?
Mhm.
Um, so be good to talk a bit about uh, why we do it. And so I guess one reason is we do it because we believe we have to do it and it pleases God. But the question
Okay.
to ask is, well, why does it please God? Does he need our fasts? does he actually want us to do it, and why does he want us to do it? So I would try and sort of, I mean, my personal experience is that fasting, it can be hard the first sort of few days, first week or so. And in the middle of summer, it was, very long days. It was sort of like from 2, 3 in the morning. You can't eat or drink until 10:30 at night. And it's a very long day, especially if you're working. And then you've got a 4-hour window to eat and drink. And then you're drinking lots because you think that's the main thing. I need to drink.
Right.
You're up in the night, going to the toilet or, and
Right.
then you,
Yeah.
and that actually, I used to struggle with that part more than anything else, is the tiredness for work because of lack of sleep. And obviously we try to pray in the night as well and that type of thing. So it's not just about eating and drinking. So the first week I would find, a bit challenging, especially if you're a caffeine addict and you're used to having your coffees in the morning and your Diet Cokes in the day. So switching off from that can give us a bit of a headache. And obviously it's sort of like a detox, isn't it? So your body gets hit hard sometimes in the first few days, and your stomach tries to adjust itself, and it starts rumbling when it's got into his routine of having lunch. And when it doesn't get it, it gets hungry. So it's passing that few days is the hardest, I would say. But then afterwards, it's amazing how our bodies adapt to routine. So I think I can just feel my body just going into fast mode, and everything just switches off. And then you don't feel hungry anymore because you're getting used to this new routine. You stop going to the toilet. It's not because you're dehydrated. It's just that your kidneys are, your body's trying to keep its energy and it changes the direction of the energy. So instead of going to digestion, it goes to repairing of cells. And so you're starting this detox process. So it's a physical detox for the body. And science has shown actually that, they've done studies on rats and mice, and actually fasting is really beneficial. Lots of people who are not religious are fasting these days because they found that actually it strengthens our bodies, it gets rid of toxins, it helps us to live longer. So the study on the rats showed that there was a group which they fasted and a group which they didn't. And the one that was fasted, I can't remember exactly how many days, but they lived 3 times longer because of that. And also they did this study on mice where they fasted a group of mice and didn't fast another group of mice, and they gave them both a chemotherapy drug, toxic drug, and the ones which fasted, they just carried on playing happily like nothing happened, and the ones that didn't fast died. So and now because of that evidence, people recommend fasting when they're on chemotherapy to try and, so it's all, scientifically, there's a lot of evidence that fasting is really good for our bodies. So back to my personal experience. So second week, I'm getting used to it. Third week, I start to really enjoy it, actually. I mean, the whole process I'm enjoying because it's the holy month of Ramadan, and Muslims believe that, the Quran was revealed in this month. It's a blessed holy month. And so we also try to sort of read the Quran from front to back, the whole thing during this month if we can. And so third week, I start to really enjoy it. And then by the last week, I actually get really sad that it's ending because it becomes a very spiritual experience. And I agree, like eating in the nighttime, it's best not to overindulge because I actually feel worse when I do that than, if I just eat small portions. And the worst thing to do is go to a supermarket when you're fasting because you think that you can eat everything, but no. So there's lots of benefits of fasting. I think the main thing is as well is it's supposed to be a time of reflection, of remembering our Creator, of prayer, of reflecting on ourselves and our behavior, and it helps you to be grateful for your food and for your provision, and helps us to have empathy for those who are less fortunate. You know, some people don't have a choice to fast, and you know, there's starvation in the world, and helps you to empathize with those people and actually, you know, see things from their perspective. So it teaches us compassion, teaches us patience and self-discipline. You know, I find that if I said, that's it, I'm not going to eat this cake, I think unless it's for a really good reason, other than just because, you know, I just find that really difficult.
Right.
Whereas if I'm fasting, it's not, it doesn't even come to my mind. It's just, I have to do it, and so you do it. It's actually not as hard as you think it is. So, it's like if you make a promise to do something and you feel like you have to do it.
Right.
Not that I wouldn't do it. If I say I'm not going to eat cake, so at the moment I haven't eaten cake for over a month, and I'm doing it not because I'm doing it just because I want to do it. So I can, it's about it teaches you self-discipline, and to not just get everything you want whenever you want, but actually learn patience and learn to wait for good, you know, for things. And it teaches us so self-discipline, patience, compassion, empathy, gratitude, and just sort of knowing that it's beyond words, really. I find it's knowing that it's about sacrifice. So you're sacrificing for your creator, even though he doesn't need it. You know, he doesn't need our fast. He doesn't want our fast. What he really wants, really, I think, is the spiritual purification that comes with it. And actually the other type of fast, so fasting from bad speech, fasting from anger, from, you know, getting angry, and fasting from just doing bad things, really, and harming other people. So I think it's not just about the stopping eating and drinking. If you're going to carry on slandering, gossiping, you know, getting angry, you're missing the point of fasting. So it's like on a deeper level, should be about fasting from greed, fasting from envy, fasting from anger and vengeance and lust, and fasting from you know, laziness. You know, people carry on working during Ramadan, and actually if you're just going to not do anything and just sleep the whole time, again, it's missing the point. You know, we're supposed to, God doesn't want to make it difficult for us. He doesn't want to make it too difficult for us so that to the point where we're suffering, because that is also missing the point. It's just, it actually says in the Quran that, you know, for those who are unwell or on a journey, or if it's too difficult, then actually for every fast that you don't do, you can feed a poor person instead. So obviously there's that. So we're not supposed to be suffering, you know, not everybody has to fast. But whoever does observe the month of Ramadan and can fast, it's advised in the Quran to do it because it's for our benefit, more than anything else. And it's like a boot camp, a spiritual boot camp for Muslims, to preparation for the following months, to hopefully keep away from the things that are bad for us, really.
It's interesting, as the Quran, when it talks about the month of Ramadan, says, as was done by those before you. And
yes, it says that the fasting has been prescribed to you as it was prescribed to those before you.
right.
Yes.
And indeed, you know, the Jewish custom was to fast during the month of Elul, which comes before the Jewish New Year. So it's it's basically a 40-day period. There's Elul, which comes before, it actually is, and also one of the names of the Turkish months in I think September, around
Yeah.
September time. But Elul, and then comes the first days of Tishrei, which is Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and all that 40-day period. Sephardic Jews still do special prayers during that time, get up very, very, very early in the morning and pray. And but the custom was also to fast. You know, I think when I was a kid, fasting, I always associated fasting with suffering. But partially because people complain, and I remember people complaining and whatever. And as I got older, uh, I think, I learned, I think, more sophisticated, sometimes our religion gets stuck in our childhood, but I learned more sophisticated ways of understanding why we fast. I think one of the reasons is that fasting slightly undoes the threads that tie the body to the soul, right?
Mhm.
There's just a little bit of a loosening up that
Mm.
takes
So,
place when you
yeah.
fast, that
Mm.
it works both ways, actually. Sometimes when you fast, you feel your body more intensely, right? And especially if you're just beginning, right?
Yeah.
You feel the body much more intensely and say, oh, it's complaining, it's doing various things. And then eventually it loosens up,
Yeah.
and it allows the spirit to be kind of a little more agile. I guess
That's
that.
beautiful how you put that. It is. It's like I find as well the first week you're trying to break free from the addictions that you've got in this world. So it's sort of breaking you free from those attachments that we have to this physical world. And that can be a painful process. And I think that's why the first week is probably the hardest, is because, if you're used to having your coffee every morning and it becomes
Yeah.
like an addiction, doesn't it? And if
Yeah.
you're used to having your Diet Cokes in the day, and you're, and some obviously people stop smoking if they can during Ramadan. So things like that, it does help us to break free from those addictions, but it's the hardest part is the beginning. And our mind tells us, oh, don't do it, it's too hard, it's too painful, it won't get easier. But I promise you it does get easier, and God helps. It's not as hard as we think it or imagine it to be. And I think in that painful period when those ties are loosening between the soul and, the, as you said,
Yeah.
it can be a painful process, but the pain is gain, and there's a lot of
Yeah. And you have to make through it, and as far as coffee and all those things, and these are, these, I think it's useful, it's also useful to kind of notice our habits. I mean, I'm probably addicted to coffee, right?
No,
And
I am.
actually,
I worry about how I'm the first week. I'm thinking, oh
right.
gosh, am I going to not have coffee?
Yeah, it's only when I fast that I notice I'm addicted to coffee, because I've built my coffee addiction into my lifestyle, right? So I know I have I have a cup of coffee in the morning, and I usually have a cup of espresso in the afternoon. And so I know,
Mhm.
I know that that's what's going to happen. And so I don't have to think about it. And
Yeah.
then, but now, but if you're fasting, all of a sudden, those things become obvious. And you think, well, wait a second. So do I really want to be dependent on something like that? Is that something, is that healthy for me? Maybe I'll decide that I do, right? But at least I've made a decision. At least I've had to think about it. And
Yeah, so it sort of trains our body, ourselves as well, to be able to let go of things, because that's a great ability to, we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And the hard part of our lives is, we make plans, we attach ourselves to things and people, and when things suddenly change and don't go how we expect or want them to, we're so attached, we find that a really painful process to suddenly be those things taken away from us. I've got a picture on the wall that it reminds me of just the parable of sort of being on a boat out in the ocean, and then a storm hits you, and then you lose everything, and all the things that you think will save you disappear from you, and you're left there, and that's when we turn to our Creator and we cry out from the bottom of our hearts. We're completely naked, and we're cold and abandoned, and everything's abandoned us. There's nobody to help us, and then we cry out to the Lord of the worlds to save us and to help us. And actually, I think that's the place where God wants us to be at all times. My understanding is, and to remember that, really. And we take for granted all of our blessings. There's so much to be grateful for, and we take it all for granted. We all do. I do. All of us do. And it's so important to make time to be grateful. And sometimes it has to be taken away from us in order for us to appreciate what we had or have.
We don't realize how fragile we are. If you haven't eaten for a day, if you haven't eaten for a day, and you're getting, tired, and your head is spinning a little bit, and and all you have to do is take one date, right? And the sugar hits you, right? And your frontal cortex turns back on, right? And the lights go on, right? And you think to yourself, that was it? Really, that was it? All it took was a gram of sugar. All it took was a little tiny bit of sugar, to make my brain work again. I mean, we're very, very fragile, and it's good to understand that we're fragile and understand that other people are fragile, right?
But
That
also,
other
what was
people.
very interesting as well in that I've experienced is that actually we depend on food as our life source, our energy source. We think that's it. This food will keep me alive. But once I tried fasting for 3 days in a row, like no eating at all. It's not much, really, 3 days. I know people have fasted for 30 days nonstop and they're fine. But I did it for 3 days, and I found that actually, once you've got past that first day, and it's all in the mind, really. When you let go of food, I found that on the third day, I felt so spiritually strong. I went shopping for some food and I went shopping and I had bags of food, and I was crossing a road and I didn't even feel it in my hand. Normally I'd struggle with this weight of the food, but actually I was fasting for 3 days and I felt a lot stronger than I would have otherwise. Because I think
We're not recommending you do this.
no, I'm not recommending we do this, and this is not a necessary thing to do, actually. In the Quran, it's quite clear for Muslims, to that they can eat from, sunset until sunrise. But I just wanted to try it out. And I found that actually you after a while you switch off from depending on the food as your source, but you switch into a different type of bread, like the bread of a spiritual bread that keeps you going. And actually, it's a beautiful place to eat from. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, and actually, we can always remember that it's not just physical food. It's what is the source of our physical food? It's all from our Creator, and remember, and God's words and his wisdom and his knowledge, his messages that he sent through the prophets. It's all like food, and that's another place we can eat from, and actually we should eat from, especially in the month of Ramadan while we're fasting. It's a good time to eat from that type of food.
So
There we go.
I'll give everybody a blessing that that everybody first of all, you should have a beautiful Ramadan. Lale and everybody else have a beautiful Ramadan, and you have a little bit of time to get prepared. So so work on it. Okay, you have to get ready. You can't just start, right? It's not, you can't just click in. You have to prepare yourself, and prepare yourself both, physically and spiritually. Cut down the coffee. Highly recommended. and spiritually, if you're planning on cutting down on anger, probably today is a good day to start. Okay,
Yes,
because it's not so easy. If you cut down on saying bad things, today is a good day to start. There's no reason to wait till Ramadan to do that. Today is a good day to start. So you start cutting down slowly, so you don't have to like. I know some people on Ramadan, they're like, don't talk to me because I might get angry. Okay, so you don't have to. Okay, don't do that. Get yourself prepared for that. Calm yourself down. And I wish everybody a beautiful Ramadan. Don't forget to study. Don't forget to pray. Don't forget to do all those things. And
let's try and keep it up for the rest of the year.
right,
Keep away from bad habits and
doesn't
getting
have to stop. Doesn't have to stop at the end of the month. Okay. And the test of any spiritual activity is not what happens during it, but what happens after. Question is, are you the same person? Are you the same person at the end of the process that you were in the beginning of the process? And of course you won't be. Of course you'll be much better than you were before. So I wish everybody.
God bless you. Thank you so much.
Very
God
welcome.
bless you. Peace and blessings, everybody. Thank you for listening, and see you again, God willing, next week. Shalom. Bye-bye.
Shalom.
Bye.